rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He stuck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Here we go. Top NFL draft prospect Shane Ray cited for possession of marijuana. Everybody's freaking out this morning. What do I always say? Is he a quarterback? Nope. He's an edge rusher. I don't care. But Mark Dominic, former general manager on Mike and Mike this morning, says GMs are talking to him and they are bailing.
What is this kid going to do on Friday or Saturday night before a big game? Is he going to make another poor choice like this? And that's what you have to factor into it. So, yeah, Mike, I'm not condoning the marijuana, but it's just the timing is so bad that and the foot issue tells me that this guy's not even dropping out of the first round. I think this guy's dropping to the third or fourth round now.
What? Okay, you want to make money in real estate? Buy the house that needs work. Warren Buffett's called value investing. Here's value drafting, getting Shane Ray second, third, fourth round. Go look at Pete Carroll's defense. Yeah, there's all sorts of head cases on that defense at USC and Seattle. They can tackle. I think there's a big disconnect right now in America between older white general managers, legislators, and young athletes. I think pot in the backpack is as commonplace as chapstick. My staff disagrees, and I'm the old guy on our staff. I hear this all the time. What about judgment? What about his judgment? He's 21. Okay, 21-year-olds in college eat 9 tacos for breakfast and chase it with a Mountain Dew. You're worried about judgment? They thought Jersey Shore was inspirational. Their dorm rooms smell like goats. They think weed and energy drinks are a food group. They're 21-year-old dudes. Their brains are 4 years from being fully developed. Can they tackle? Here's what I can't live with. He doesn't love the game. He has no heart. He's soft. Warren Moon and Randy Moss smoked pot in college. How'd that work out? LT smoked probably at half. How'd that work out? He's an edge rusher. He's not a quarterback. He's not a point guard. He's not leading my franchise. Go hit people. Make them wince in pain. I'm sorry. I think there's a massive disconnect here. Massive. I think it's chapstick for a college athlete. I think it's chapstick. And by the way, Seattle Seahawks are the best team in the NFC. They're in Washington State. He wouldn't have even been cited in that state for this. Legal. Colorado, now Alaska. So I tell you, if that kid drops to the third round, what if this happened? By the way, he wasn't impaired. He wasn't impaired. He drove away from it. They didn't cuff him. He wasn't impaired. They found a little joint in his car. What if a buddy called him and said, dude, NBA playoffs on tonight, Bulls, Bucks, come on over, let's spark up. You've been working your tail off, dude. I've been watching you. You're my boy. I've been watching you for 6 weeks. Get ready for this draft. Come on over. Let's spark up. Bring a joint. What, now he's an outlaw? You know what he's called to Pete Carroll? My first pick, if he's available. I mean, come on. Yeah, I was talking to a college coach. I was talking to a college football coach about 6 months ago about this. And this college coach took a job and he rebuilt the program. And I said, I was talking to him about his 3 best players. He said, I walked in to recruit the best one. His brothers were smoking pot on the porch. Am I supposed to be outraged or realize that's the culture? Dude can play. The kid I'm talking about will be drafted in the first round. I'm not giving his name out. If you're telling me this kid's going to drop, let's just say I'm very high on Shane Ray. Let me be blunt about him. I've seen him smoke too many offensive tackles not to take him. I think it's going to be a terrific joint relationship between the two.
Is that part of your stand-up act?
Yeah, it is. Heard brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES, 1-800-OFFICES. I'm sorry. I see him as a budding star. They're getting worse. Really, I gave you the best ones early. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's not a quarterback, and he's not a point guard. I don't give a rip about Dez Bryant smoking out. I don't care. I don't care about edge rushers. I don't care about corners. Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, I want a grown-up. Outside, I want a maniac. Go hit somebody. LT's the best defensive player I ever saw. He was completely off the rails. A mess, personally. That's why he can run through people, collide with walls of people. So I'm watching the Bulls choke like a cat on a hairball last night to Milwaukee at home. And I predicted before the year, I said I thought Chicago was going to win the East for 1 year, and then LeBron would put together a great Cleveland team, and they'd win for the next 7. But this Bulls roster, you know what it's starting to feel like to me? That Sacramento Kings team with Vlade and Bibby and Weber, and they never won squat, never won a ring. Didn't get there to the finals. Stockton Malone got to the finals. The Bills with Jim Kelly got to the Super Bowl. The Fab Five got to the Final Four. Sean Payton, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp got to the finals. But they've got a great head coach. Noah, Rose, Butler, Heinrich, Taj Gibson, now Pau Gasol. 1 Eastern Conference Finals, 1 to show for it, and they got smoked. I don't know if it's heart, and it's really unfair in sports. There's all these examples of teams that were great for years and years and years and years. Really excellent. Chicago Bulls were one of them, didn't win anything. And sometimes, the Tampa Bay Rays under Joe Madden, the Cleveland Indians in the late to mid-1990s. Chip Kelly's Oregon Ducks dominated the Pac-12, never got a national title. Stockton Malone with Utah. Teams that are great for those Sacramento Kings. And then sometimes it works the opposite, where you get the Florida Marlins twice, who have been grease fires, won a World Series, and been a grease fire again an hour later. Auburn football with Cam Newton. Bad an hour earlier, bad an hour after. Great for a year. The Georgia Tech football team in 1990, the 2005 Chicago White Sox. Average, great, average. Some teams are just lightning in a bottle, great briefly, win 2 titles. The Chicago Bulls are going to fall into that other camp where they're good for years. All sorts of really good players, great coach. Nothing to show for it. And I think a lot of it is I said he's Allen Iverson, but more likable. Derrick Rose, sorry, looks great on SportsCenter highlights. I'd never, ever build my franchise around him. Wouldn't. This team offensively still has 7-minute blocks. They can't hit a shot. Where's Derrick Rose then? God. This thing's going to go 7. Milwaukee and the Bulls is going to go 7.
Colin Cowherd. Looking good. Well, looking okay.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Today I'm flying to Vegas after the show and then doing live shows in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm not really sure if the public's welcome. I don't even know. It's by the wave pool. I don't think they really open the wave pool until like 8. I have no idea. I've stayed at Mandalay Bay a dozen times. Did I ever tell you my great Mandalay Bay story? Oh, God. So, like 5 years ago, I stay at Mandalay Bay. It's connected to the Four Seasons, Charlie Palmer Steakhouse. So it's a great place to go, and then you can escape the gambling stuff and the smoking stuff and go over to Four Seasons and have a steak. And so I've stayed at the Mandalay Bay. That's kind of where I stay a lot of the times. And I go there a few years ago, and my wife and I decide with the kids and the stepkids and all the kids, and I'm like, let's take the kids to Vegas for like 5 days. That'd be really fun. And do a bunch of Vegas stuff. Go to the Shark Tanks and maybe a helicopter tour. Let's do a bunch of fun stuff for the kids, right? Like a one-time deal, a one-off in Vegas. So we make the reservations like a year in advance. You know what I mean? Because we got a lot of kids and a lot of moving parts. So we make the reservations like a year in advance. And my wife's really good at that stuff. And then she calls like every 2 months just to double, triple check. Calls again, April, May, June, July, August. Then it finally happens in like December 1st. We're going on vacation. And we get there. And I don't blame anybody because running a hotel and a casino, it's not easy. And this happens all the time. It's happened to me 1,000 times. We get there, and they screw the rooms up. They had all the rooms, but they had one on the 11th floor, one on the 3rd. And we're like, we got kids. They're like 5 years old. We got to be in the same room. And they're like, oh, our bad. So they didn't have any rooms left. So the Mandalay didn't have any rooms left. And they're like, well, we don't normally do this, but we're going to give you the entire, 53rd floor. So they gave us the Hangover suite. Remember the movie The Hangover, that suite they had? So they gave us this suite, and this is what you give like oil barons in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I could never afford this thing. In fact, it was unbelievable. So my wife, I wasn't even there because I was showing up the next day. With a couple of the kids. She went early with the kids. So she goes, you're not going to believe the room we're in. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I've been in a house. I don't really care where we sleep. Just give me a comfortable bed. So I get there. And I say, yeah, I need the keys for this room. And the lady looks at me. So she was a different person that checked my wife in. She goes, oh, you use that elevator. And I'm like, I've never even seen that elevator. I didn't even know there was an elevator there. She goes, oh, you take that elevator. So I go, all right. So I take my kids, a couple kids I have, 4 are already there, 2 are with me. We go up the entire floor. There's a 300-inch movie theater screen. That's what I watch the games on. There was a separate room where you order liquor, and you could tell it was a rich person's room because it was like $300 for a bottle of Grey Goose. There was a small pricing index hidden behind like a shelf. People obviously that stay in that room don't care about the cost of alcohol. So we had the entire floor because they ran out of hotel rooms, and we had like 7 people.
There is a tiger in the bathroom.
It was insane. When the planes took off McCarran Airport, like you could wave to the pilot. They flew right past the room. So I've been trying to duplicate that ever since. Like calling in confusing orders to casinos. Yeah, I wanted 19 kids. And so that's my Mandalay Bay story. So I'm staying and doing shows at Mandalay Bay Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at Mandalay Bay Beach. If you can get there, if you want me to sign stuff and say hi and stuff, yeah, whatever. Pictures, Instagram, whatever stuff. We're brought to you by Cabbage. That's Cabbage with a K, #1 online provider of small business loans. So John Gruden is a former football coach, and I love Todd McShay and Mike Mayock, and I love Mel Kiper. But there is something about the language of a football coach that is very interesting to me. And John talks in a certain code that some critics may not like, but he says certain things that really stick with me, and they're really digestible and consumable as a sportscaster or you as a viewer. And you never hear these talked about like with McShay or Kiper or a lot of the draft guys or the media guys because they don't watch the film or play the game or have the, they've not been on the sidelines for, Super Bowls. But here is, and it's very interesting because I've heard Pete Carroll say the same thing as John Gruden says. He's talking about a safety from Utah named Eric Rowe. He goes, Gruden says, safeties become such an important position. We cannot have one-dimensional safeties because if we do, we lose our disguises. That's a coach talk. And what he is saying is why Earl Thomas is so good for the Seahawks. Pete Carroll can disguise anything. Earl can cover so much ground. You can move him inside the box, ball snap, bang, he's already back. You can hide all your coverages. That's what Pete Carroll wants to do. That's what Nick Saban wants to do. That's what Urban Meyer wants to do. You're trying to hide your coverages. You can't do it with one of those big, you've seen Nick Saban safeties go to the NFL and they can't play. They're big hitters. They're big lumbering hitters. That's not what the NFL wants. They want Earl Thomas. Smaller, cover sideline to sideline. He talks about Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar is a receiver at USC. And I watched Nelson play in high school in Tampa, and I've watched him play every college game. He goes, I like him better than Marquise Lee and Robert Woods because he can run double moves, which, by the way, is completely accurate. I like him better than both as well. He runs double moves. You run a slant out of a slot position, he's open. If it's covered, he turns it into a seam. He runs double moves really well. That is such a coaching term. He talks about, here's the other one. Amari Cooper, the wide receiver for Alabama. You don't hear analysts say this. You hear John Gruden say this. He goes, he runs a large inventory of routes. What? What he's saying is, you think inventory, you think Costco. They've got a lot of inventory, a lot of shelves. He goes, if the coverage rotates, he knows how to adjust. He has a large inventory of routes. That is absolutely something coaches think about. Can he run one route? Or does he have 9? When Tim Duncan broke into the NBA, he had 8 moves. He had a large inventory of moves. Most guys, even LeBron, break into the league, they've got 2 moves, and it takes them 4 years to develop 3 more. Amari Cooper comes into the league with 6 routes he can run high-end well. He talks about Marcus Mariota, and this is very interesting. He thinks he should be the number 1 player in the draft. He said, the whole thing about Oregon being no-huddle, dive option team, said Gruden, it's just a narrative resulting from a lack of information. Oregon runs a lot of pro-style concepts. He does a lot with protections. I've watched him. I've seen him throw the ball with touch and timing in tight windows. And by the way, this is what Louis Riddick said to concur with John Gruden a week ago on our show.
He is a full field reader. He understands coverage concepts. He understands where the ball needs to go. He understands moving through progressions quickly. And if you watch him at Oregon, he does this plenty, where you're going, that translates to the NFL. That route concept translates to the NFL. Look, not every guy is tightly covered in the NFL. There's defensive backs who get beat plenty. So every quarterback isn't fitting the ball into a small box every play where you're going, hey, well, you're not going to have those gaps in the NFL. Look, there's plenty of DBs in the NFL who can't cover me.
The other guy that he really loves is Jeremy Langford, the running back at Michigan State. Now, I have a belief now in the NFL that running backs have been so devalued, now they're valuable again. Like, everybody sold their stock on running backs. This draft's got like 3 or 4 big-time running backs. Here's what Gruden says about Jeremy Langford. He said he ran a 4.4. I don't understand why people don't name him more. My dad coached running backs. I've always had a special appreciation for the position. Gurley and Gordon are clearly the top 2. But Langford looks like an NFL running back. All of his tape, he breaks tackles. He can pick up blitzes. He's tough. He can catch. He's got home run speed. And I love the way they train guys at Michigan State. They come out as tough guys. Jeremy Langford, Michigan State. So I think John Gruden brings out very digestible, easy-to-follow stuff. And he's got a certain lexicon, a certain language that's very coach speak, but I love it. I love the idea of Amari Cooper having a large inventory of routes. That is similar to saying Tim Duncan came into the NBA with 7 to 8 moves, already polished and ready to produce. I feel the exact same way. I just don't have the ability to package it like Gruden. That's a really smart way to say it. The draft, by the way, Thursday, 8 Eastern, ESPN and ESPN Radio. I'm in Vegas. I will be in my hotel room ordering room service, watching the draft. I know. I'm a huge nerd, and I love it.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
By the way, all those kids working at Google and Yahoo, they smoke pot in college. You're not going to hire them. You don't like their judgment. I bet the day before they went in for their job interview at Apple, they sparked up. You're not going to hire them. Either you're smart or you're not. You're creative or you're not. I mean, seriously, we just look at athletes the wrong way. They're 21-year-old. To be an elite NFL draft pick is no different than being an elite engineer coming out of, Georgia Tech. If you're elite, you're elite. It doesn't mean you're not 21 and don't spark up with your buddies. Half the kids that are in Silicon Valley, half those creative kids, do you like their judgment? No, you like their artistry. You like their intelligence. You like their raw talent. I like Shane Ray's raw talent. I don't give a rip about his judgment. Well, he'll be suspended. You know how many times I've heard that? You know how many times I've heard GM say, well, that guy, he hasn't proven to me if you can't make it a good. How do you know? He didn't get cuffed. He didn't get taken away. They pulled him over. They smelled pot because pot smells. It smells. You can smell pot in a car. You can smell it anywhere you put pot. You can smell it. It's not like blow. You can hide somewhere. Heroin, acid, alcohol. You have a bottle of Grey Goose in the back. Nobody can smell it. You have pot in the car. Somebody can smell it. They pulled him over. They go, you got pot. Open that up. Boom, there's a joint. Oh. You're not going to draft the guy because of that? Because he had herb in his car for 6 miles as he drove to his buddy to watch the Bulls-Bucks series? Seriously. If you want to pass on him, I don't. The Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll's history at USC and Seattle has been rolling the dice with head cases. New England, they went out and got Darrelle Revis, who's a holdout waiting to happen. Corey Dillon had major baggage. All right. I mean, Randy Moss. They went and acquired Randy Moss, who had major baggage. If you're trying outside a quarterback, I don't care. I just don't care. I really don't. And especially when it's a non-addictive drug. If it's an addictive drug, then I'm worried. Because then, when you watch Intervention, you ever seen that show Intervention? Like, I don't watch it. I struggle with it, but I've seen clips of it. How often is it pot? Not very often. It's hard drugs you get hooked on. Very rarely is it cannabis. Yeah, we've got a problem with Bob. He won't stop eating Pringles. I mean, the guy is addicted to mac and cheese, especially about 11 o'clock at night watching cartoons. You don't see that on Intervention, Stanzik. You don't. America's got a bigger problem with trans fat. That I'd worry about. The kids at McDonald's 4 days a week. I'm worried about that. He's got something in his backpack. Cops pull him off. I'm telling you, I just don't get it. Goodfellas. Okay, there's like 5 movies in my life that have been seminal movies. Like, to change the way I watch movies, that I can watch them. And most movies you watch once, maybe twice, and you're done watching it. There's a handful of movies in my life I can sit down, it's halfway through the movie, and I can't turn it off. There's not many of these. Argo, Silence of the Lambs, Platoon, Shawshank Redemption, although I think I've seen that now enough, I can turn it off. But I tell you, number one could be Goodfellas, and it's the 25th anniversary of Goodfellas. And at the Tribeca Film Festival, the 12-dayer, De Niro, Lorraine Bracco, Paul Sorvino, and Ray Liotta were all there. Pesci was not. And they went back and they talked about the making of the movie. The reason, and I've seen Donnie Brasco, I've seen all the mob movies. I've seen Casino. I was almost in that one as an extra. I'll explain it someday. To me, Goodfellas was the first mob movie where it wasn't cartoonish, where all the guys in the movie were vulnerable. Like Ray Liotta ended up broke and living in a cornfield. Paul Sorvino had all his lieutenants lie to him. Joe Pesci got whacked. Robert De Niro didn't get his guy into the mob, and when he was going to get into the mob, he got whacked. But I was telling the guys this morning, what makes Goodfellas so great, and I'm some kid that grew up in the middle of, Washington State. It was so ethnic. And I said, give me the 10 best lines in the movie. I'll read the line, and I'll try to read it like a tough guy. And notice the difference between Ray Liotta playing Henry Hill and me reading it. Now, I'll try to read it as a tough guy. Okay, I'll try to read this. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. To me, being a gangster was better than being president of the United States. Even before I first wandered into a cab stand for an after-school job, I just knew I wanted to be part of them. It was there, and I knew that I belonged. To me, it meant being somebody in a neighborhood full of nobodies. And they weren't like anybody else. I mean, they did whatever they wanted. They double parked in front of a hydrant. Nobody gave them a ticket. In the summer, when they played cards all night, nobody called the cops. I wanted to be a gangster. Now, that's me being a tough guy. Liotta, De Niro, Pesci. It was so real and so vulnerable. It didn't even sound like the other movies. And they all, in the end, didn't get what they wanted. They weren't cartoonish. In the end of that movie, none of the mobsters got the life they really wanted, which, by the way, is how it really works. Mobsters end up dead, fat, prostate cancer, eat too many sausages, jail. That's the way it really works. It's not like, hey, you dirty rag. Hey, you dirty rag. Bang, bang, bang. I win, you lose. It's not the way the mob works. The way the mob works is you get this brief, it's like being a pro athlete. You get 9 great years. You do whatever you want, get all the girls, all the money, and then you end up rotting next to rats. That's the way it really works. You get clipped. Goodfellas, to me, is the best mob movie of all time. And I almost was in Casino. 3 of my co-anchors were in Casino because they shot it in Vegas, and they needed newscasters. And I was covering UNLV basketball, and I was out of town. Or I would have been in Casino.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Tomorrow's show through Friday, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather. I'm rooting for Pacquiao, but I think Floyd Mayweather, closer to his prime, probably wins. Tools of the Game brought to you by Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Home Depot. Warren Moon's a Hall of Fame quarterback who I watched collegiately. And it's funny, Bruce Arians said he doesn't think Oregon's style of offense prepares guys for the NFL. You ran a lot in college, but you could also throw from the pocket. Let's start with Mariota. Are you concerned that he's a runner first and a thrower second?
I'm not concerned that he's a runner first, but I am concerned of the offense that he came out of at Oregon. If you look at the history of the guys that have come out of that offense, making the transition to the NFL, none of them have really made that transition successfully. So even though he's probably a much better athlete than some of those other guys that played that position, I still have my doubts as far as it happening really quickly. Can he make the transition? Yeah, I think he can. But, these young guys are going to put them on the field very quickly because they're drafting them high, they're paying them a lot of money, and they want them to play right away sometimes before they're not ready.
How come you work so well and transition so well from a guy that did have mobility? I mean, you had real mobility if you wanted to, but you never had a problem figuring out the concepts.
Well, that was one of the things I was very gifted with, was wherever I was asked to play, whatever offense I played in, I was able to adapt to it, whether it was playing in the Canadian Football League, playing in the run and shoot, playing in the pro-style offense. It really didn't matter. I tended to have the gifts that it took to make that transition, whether it was being able to throw the football and make all the throws. I think having that anticipation is something that's very important for quarterbacks, being able to throw the ball into windows before a receiver gets there. Those are things that you have to either work at or sometimes have to be gifted with that in order to make that happen. And some quarterbacks have it, some quarterbacks don't.
What is it that, in your opinion, makes Jameis Winston the most NFL-ready quarterback?
I think the offense that he comes out of at Florida State, it's more of a pro-style offense as far as what he's going to see in the National Football League, the type of route concepts that they ran. I think he's very good at anticipation and throwing the ball into those windows I talked about. And then he has great leadership abilities, and he plays well at the biggest moments. So those are things you look for out of your quarterback. Even though he does have the issues off the field, those are things you hope he'll grow into as far as his maturity is concerned. But as far as a football player on the field, he's got everything you're looking for as a quarterback.
Let's go back to when you were 21, 22 years old. I've said earlier, I do think quarterbacks need to be more mature. But if a guy smokes pot in college, if he can tackle, he can tackle. I'm not dropping him precipitously in the draft. Go back to when you were 21, 22, 23. How mature were you at the University of Washington going into the pros or college Canadian football?
I was pretty mature. I never even drank in college. I was just one of those guys that my body was my temple, and I wanted to take care of it. I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize my opportunity to maybe get to the next level. Does that mean the kids that make these mistakes today are wrong? No, they're going to make those mistakes. There's no question about it. But I was just a little bit more really into not making any type of mistakes because I knew playing the quarterback position, I didn't need anything else to be negative against me other than the things that were already there, which was the color of my skin and some of the other things that people criticized me for. So I didn't want to give them anything else to criticize me about.
Warren Moon, Hall of Famer, joining us, the Herd on ESPN Radio. When you watch the NFL draft, it is remarkable how few quarterbacks, of the last 61 taken, one Andrew Luck is great, and then 3 or 4 like Cam Newton and Stafford and Russell Wilson are really, really good. But there's a lot of whiffs. It can't all be because they're not good enough. I mean, some of it has to be that we're rushing these guys and they're just not quite ready. When you played quarterback, you went from college to Canadian football. I don't remember. Were you great with Edmonton first game?
No, I wasn't. It was a transition period for me as well, and especially learning a new game. It's not only did I have to learn a new offense and new teammates, but I had to learn different rules. 3 downs, and the whole game is strategized differently up there. So I had to learn that and become good at it. And I think you're right as far as these young kids being put on the field too quickly sometimes. That has a lot to do with why they're not successful right away. The ones that are successful are the ones that have a good unit around them. They have a support system. They have a great defense like Russell Wilson had when he came to Seattle. Great running game where everything isn't put on his shoulders. And I think the guys that have had the success earlier, the Joe Flacco's and people like that, have had that around them to make the transition easier for them.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, you do Seahawk games. There's been a lot of discussion. Now, I think he's elite. And people say, well, he's 5'11", but I keep saying he's got the best snap judgment of any quarterback, including Elway, Luck, Brady, I've ever seen in my life. Once the ball is snapped, his judgment is incredible. How do you classify Russell Wilson? Is he a top 5 quarterback?
Yeah, I think he's a top quarterback in this league. He's just not asked to do what those other guys do. He's not asked to throw it 35 times, 40 times a game like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Drew Brees or some of the other guys. But if he was asked to do that, and if he had the same type of supporting cast, there's no question he would be able to do the same things, because whenever he's been asked to do that in certain games, throw the ball over 35, maybe 40 times, he always produces. So I know he's capable of doing it, but he's just not asked to do it. So he's going to always be put down as far as being one of the top quarterbacks, because he doesn't throw for big amounts of yardage.
Yeah. Hall of Famer Warren Moon, good talking to you, bud.
Always great talking to you, Colin. Enjoy the draft.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
Right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
Have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio.
You know, I watched that stuff last night on a variety of channels, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, the Baltimore riots. Those are illegal acts. That's all that is. Well, it's a protest. No, it's not. It's stealing. Well, there's resentment. That's your problem. It's stealing and they're criminal acts. You know, everybody's trying to, well, let's understand. I don't want to understand anything. You're walking into a store, coming out with products you didn't pay for. That's stealing. And that's a you problem. That's why there's 202 arrests. You can say whatever you want to call vehicle fires and building fires. That's illegal activity. That's criminal activity. I'll let all the left-leaning critics apologize for it and make excuses for it, but the black mayor and the black police commissioner have echoed my sentiments. It's illegal. Don't do it. Arrest them. That's not rebellion. That's not protesting. It's crime. You run into a building, take stuff and leave. That's not a protest. That's not a march. That's a crime. Arrest the person. I mean, you watch all these media outlets, nobody can give you a dose of reality. Well, I'm Caucasian, they're African American, I've got to watch myself here. It doesn't matter who's running into a building. Doesn't matter. If you're running into a building and taking stuff out you didn't pay for, that's a crime. Period. I don't want to hear about your angst and your rebellion and your protest in the years before. That is a crime. I mean, you know, the Ravens had to cancel a draft party. The Orioles are having to cancel games. You're affecting business, hardworking people. By the way, the Ravens and the Orioles, very ethnically diverse businesses are being affected. Employees told to stay home. That is crime in Baltimore. That's all that is. And I don't think that's the best way to change a community is to burn it down. Nobody wins with that stuff. And I don't want to hear the reasons for the anger and the rebellion. It is a bad day in that city. It's a bad day for the cops, the citizens, the business owners. All those businesses, you're running in there and stealing stuff. Those are hard-working people. They may be minorities. They may be women. They're all, I guarantee you, like the rest of us immigrants that have moved to this country and they start a small business and you burn it down. That's good for Baltimore? You know, you see these big box retailers. Yeah, it's one thing if you're a big box retailer. A lot of these places being looted, they're just small businesses. Mom and pop stores, it's all they have. They make $60,000 a year and pay half of it to the government. They're just trying to feed their kids and get them to school. They're not glamorous because they own a small business in Baltimore. They're not rich fat cats on Park Avenue. They're hard-working Americans, and criminals go in, have no concept of what they're doing, and burn their business down. It's disgusting. Arrest all of them. It's not a rebellion. And again, nobody's got any courage in the media to just call it as they see it. That's outrageous what they're doing. Well, sometimes cops, yeah, they're lousy. Like sometimes pilots are lousy. Sometimes reporters are lousy. Sometimes there's a bad dentist. I've been to one of those before. There's bad people everywhere. But by and large, law enforcement works their tail off and deals with all the crud that we wouldn't want to have to deal with. I just feel so bad for some of those small business people. Wake up this morning and their delivery trucks burnt down and their stores broken down, and their insurance isn't going to cover it. And how are they going to feed their kids? What are they going to do? Some of those businesses won't reopen. They don't have the money. They don't have the funds. They were barely making it. But the media apologizes for them. Well, you know, it's been a long, hard struggle for the business they just burnt down? You ask the average American. Go look at what the average business in America makes. It's not Google. Okay, the average ma and pa business, they are just paying their bills, feeding their kids, and praying they can somehow figure out a way to pay for culinary school or a decent college nearby. That's the truth about America. It's not a bunch of rich people who get on TV. It's about regular people. And those people in Baltimore have invested in that community. And you just burn it down. They are supporting Baltimore. And you just running through the streets. You don't know who those people are. It could be a young Asian couple. It could be a young Latino couple. You don't know who those people are. You just ruin their lives. Sickening. Evander Holyfield's running a charity auction where the highest bidder is going to sit next to Evander at the Mayweather fight. Go on to eBay, ebay.com/charityvision. So Vince, and this is the worst idea in the history of this show. It is the dumbest thing. I would never do it. But Vince and I and the staff got into an argument a week ago when Evander Holyfield was here. And Vince says, I would let him punch me in the arm with a glove.
That's just dumb.
Beyond dumb. I said, you're out of your mind. You're going to tip over like a frail building in a windstorm. And Vince is like, no, I'm going to let him do it. So Friday in Vegas, Evander Holyfield is going to come on set and punch Vince in the arm with a glove. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
It's the best idea we've ever had.
It is going to be moronic. And by the way, does anybody call an ambulance? Seriously.
For Evander?
Dude, look at Vince. Vince is 5'7.5", and he's a fine father and a wonderful producer. He's not exactly Usain Bolt athletically.
Yeah, but Evander's 52. Vince is going to be fine.
You see Evander Holyfield at 52.
Yeah.
He had 3% body fat. I wouldn't let Evander sneeze on me. Punch me?
No, I think he's staying at the MGM with us. Well, I'll probably see him in the gym that morning.
Oh, my God. It is the dumbest thing we've ever done on this show. It's not even a second place. It's a terrible idea. So Friday on the show, Evander Holyfield, live on television and radio, is going to punch Vince.
Yeah, once Vince walks away with no scars or anything, can he punch you in the arm for not doing it?
So you think this is a good idea?
Great idea. It's the best. I'm with Vince. It's the best idea we've ever had.
By the way, first thing Monday, we got to get to business. Help wanted. I'll be looking for a new producer on Monday because mine will be dead.
Colin Cowherd.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
This is the thing. Just let me rant about this for a couple minutes, okay? Okay, let me just go for a couple minutes. A lot of you people out there, I'm talking to you NBA beat writers. And I know some of you. I put a lot of you on the air, even if you don't work for ESPN, because I'm a believer that I should bring on people from all the networks. Local. I bring on Dan Dockich or Jim Traber, big popular local hosts, because I think they're talented. I think there's a lot of really talented people in local radio. I mean, God, Levitard can get to a syndicated level. I mean, anything goes in this business. So, but, a lot of you NBA beat writers, you're just out of your gourd. First of all, the fact that LeBron James will probably finish 5th in the NBA voting is embarrassing. It's embarrassing by you guys. I don't have a vote. It's embarrassing. Hang your heads in shame. If you put LeBron James on any stinking team in this league, they're NBA championship favorites to co-favorites. You could put James Harden on 15 teams in this league, and they wouldn't make the playoffs. Russell Westbrook without Kevin Durant, they don't even make the playoffs. And that's a good roster even without Durant. Pretty good roster. You put LeBron James on any roster in this league, favorite to win the final. You put him on Memphis, game over, they're champs. You put him on Memphis. You put him on Atlanta. You put him on Chicago, game over, champs. You put James Harden on Chicago, he may take too many shots from Derrick Rose. The idea, when I look back at those Miami teams with LeBron, that wasn't about Wade and Bosh. Those guys couldn't stay healthy. Once Chris Bosh gave LeBron a bagel in a Game 7, a 0. I can give you a 0. A 0? A bagel? Didn't even have cream cheese on it. It was a bagel. LeBron James is the only guy that's always healthy and always great on both ends. And controls every game he's in. He controls the free agent market. And you don't think he's the most valuable guy in this league? It's idiotic. People just don't understand. Do you understand how great Andrew Luck is? If you'd have put Peyton Manning behind those lousy Colt offensive lines, they're a 500 team at best. Peyton Manning cannot maneuver without time to throw. Peyton Manning and Eli Manning combined have all the mobility of a batting cage. Andrew Luck had the worst offensive line in the league. His GM gave up a first-round pick for Trent Richardson. Their defense was unwatchable, and he got them to win the division. Tom Brady's great, but when he didn't have protection, they got routed by the Chiefs. Andrew Luck, for most of his first year, 3 years, has been behind a terrible offensive line with no running game and a bunch of rookie and first-year receivers and tight ends. And they got to the AFC Championship game with that roster? He is so far and away the most valuable player in football, it's not even close. The only other quarterback in this league that could withstand that would be Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning could not win with that Colts offensive line. No way. Those guys don't have the mobility or the athleticism. So when you talk about most valuable, hell, most valuable is ready to play. You want to know who's valuable at ESPN? My staff. They never miss work. That's valuable, showing up on time. Yeah. My staff doesn't have sick days. I don't allow them. I fire them. Got a whooping cough? Yeah, you're going to get a whooping from Uncle Ronaldo. Get here to work. Some of these NBA beat writers, James Harden's number. When's the last time James Harden took control of a series defensively? How about we start with never? Derrick Rose is never healthy for more than an hour. Come on. God, Andrew Luck is so far and away the MVP of this league, it's not even close. Who in the hell is getting to the AFC Championship with that roster? He goes into Denver and hammers Denver. In Peyton Manning and Denver had significantly better players. And it was in Denver. LeBron is like on the top of Mount Vesuvius. Everybody else is at base. They're all the way down the hill. Luck is carrying the Colts. Brady's great, but he's not carrying New England. He's really good, but he's got a great coach. Last year, they had the second-best corners in the league. They run the football. They've had great offensive line play. Brady's great. Best quarterback I've ever seen, that's played for 10 years. He's the best I've ever seen, and he's really, really got great judgment. But you can't give him a bad offensive line. The secret to Tom Brady's success hasn't been Belichick. It's been that for the last 12 years, he's had an A offensive line for 9 of them. Matt, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
All right. Hey, Colin. Great show. I want to first say that. The Andrew Luck piece, I'm a huge fan from Indiana myself, but, man, I just think you're not giving Peyton any credit for the many, many years he carried the Colts team with.
Yes, and he had Hall of Fame. He had Hall of Fame Marvin Harrison. He had great running backs. He had Tony Dungy. He had an offensive line with Pro Bowlers. They don't have a player outside of maybe Vontae Davis who's a Pro Bowler. And I'm not Visa. I'm not in the credit business. Call your local show if you're looking for credit for your local team and buy pom-poms. That's not what I do. I'm not American Express. Peyton Manning had Pro Bowler everywhere. He had Pro Hall of Fame receiver. Edgerrin James is one of the 5 most impressive athletes I've ever seen. Edgerrin James could have been a wide receiver in this league and a Pro Bowler. He's like Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden, if you put him on the defensive side, he'd figure out how to be a Pro Bowler. Andrew Luck's got one guy on that roster everybody in the league would want, Vontae Davis. That's it. Oh, T.Y. Hilton, when he can catch the ball. You got to be kidding me. Peyton Manning has had a career, and then he goes to Denver, and Denver's got 9 Pro Bowlers. And he still can't win a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck got to the AFC Championship with squad, 1 Pro Bowler. They're still rebuilding that offensive line. This will be his 4th year. Peyton Manning was a free agent, basically sat out there and go. He had so many options, he turned down Seattle. That's how many options Peyton Manning had. He turned to Harbaugh and Pete Carroll and said, no, I'll take the Denver team. That had a great offensive line and unbelievable receiving talent and good corners and a Von Miller, an elite pass rush. Come on.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast. Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.